So everyone, my name is Sasha-Li Chinloy, and I am a diversity and inclusion consultant. I started out in engineering, so I've done a lot of oil and gas kind of thing and technology consulting. And I was really hoping to that being smart enough and really good at my job and good at figuring out people's problems was really gonna get me there, but there's always something like hidden, like that, always something holding me back. I remember I had a boss. He was South Asian, and he'd get really upset because the clients would tell me things. And it's like, well, they're telling me things because I'm there, I'm asking questions, and I can have an honest conversation. And I remember once, like, I was going to my performance evaluation, and so I was talking to my client, and I was like, I have to do this. It's not gonna. And he's like, okay, what I can do is write you an email, like a recommendation email saying she rocks, essentially. And here I go with this email, and everyone's like, whoa, that's amazing. And then, not long later, they're like, there's no room on projects for you. Because nobody talks about this anti-Black racism from other ethnicities, right? And like, so here I'm a Black woman, I'm younger, and I'm telling him something new, and it just cut him a little bit deeper than it would. And yeah, so from that, I've kind of come into the space with a positive thing and said, yeah, there's room for us. We know what we're doing, and once you know how to listen, everybody will grow so much more. Yeah.
Absolutely.
My question to everybody though, and I don't know if this is the right time before we move on to all, but when I hear Sasha, really great story. So thank you for sharing that story. Often the times in the workplace, how do we differentiate between this being because I'm a Black person, or because I'm female, because I'm LGBTQ, how do you know that that is why you're facing that issue versus maybe you just have a bad boss that's
so
that, so it's one of the questions that sometimes, really goes through my mind, generally.
If I can answer that, Yvonne, I think what I do is I look at how my boss reacts to other people. And I watch that interplay between him and my coworkers. As a Black female, you are looked at differently. As a Black, you're looked at differently. Let's be realistic. We do have racism. We do have systemic barriers to any success. But I watch him or her, and I watched how they interacted with my peers who are white. And if that interaction is easy, if that interaction is like back and forth, and when that interaction comes to me and it's a very difficult conversation, or there's no interaction, I know that we have barriers. And I know that we have to talk about the barrier, because I'm not going to be successful if I don't articulate the barrier and ask him or her what the problem is. Because I can't address the problem until they articulate the problem to me. And corporate Canada is very similar. Understand, we're just a number. When it came to employment equity back in the 80s, when that legislation came down from nationwide, organizations had to start looking at their workforce, because 4 groups were underrepresented: women, the Aboriginals, persons with disabilities, invisible minorities. So hence the numbers started. So diversity, equality, but understand it was really just the numbers. So they get you in the door. That's the numbers. That's the diversity side. So we're making sure we're ticking the numbers off for these folks, the underrepresented groups. But that doesn't mean the culture's inclusive. That doesn't mean there's racism in the workplace. So, at the end of the day, you have to start looking at what does this truly mean? And I think that where we are is we are now in corporate Canada, but is corporate Canada inclusive? Is corporate Canada having ears that are open and listening to our voices? Are they allowing us to be successful? And I would say the answer still is no, because inclusion means that I am at the table and my voice is being heard. I'm just not in the room.
Yeah. Yeah. So my message to corporations is, like, be bullish on Black, but be all the way bullish, right? Not just in your getting the numbers, but you know, in promoting, in listening, and everything. Like, be all the way bullish if you're gonna, if you really want the impact of hiring.
Yeah, absolutely. And just in that, saying that, when you say we have to hold them accountable.
Yeah.
I think that's the other factor. It's great that they'll show the numbers, but even with different initiatives that a lot of organizations, especially in this time, like what a time to be alive, where we're seeing a lot more action, but it's great to hear about it. I want to ensure that they execute.
Yeah,
because
that's so true.
that is,
Yeah.
so there's always an initiative, but we don't see the execution coming to completion. And that is where I think that we have to take a more aggressive approach. And more of a firm stance that we're not going to necessarily forget because you've put out a few publications, or you've, you know, on your company's Instagram, they've shown a picture and a stat. We want to make sure that it's all the way to the end, and that it doesn't stop after a year or two.
Exactly.
We've seen that happen with a variety of initiatives in general.
In order for the initiative to be really an initiative, and it shouldn't be an initiative, it should be just how you do business. It has to be embedded into the DNA of the organization. It has D&I or ED&I, however organizations want to view it. It has to be part of its overarching strategic plan, and people from the top on down have to have some type of goal or accountability within their performance every year around this. Or other than that, it gets overlooked.
Okay, so I have a different perspective. So, you know, we're all talking about being Black in corporate America, so or corporate Canada. Sorry. So we all have our experiences, which, you know, differ a little bit. So my background is a little bit mixed. You know, I have been in Canada for about 17 years. Prior to that, I was in England, started off my career, always been in the corporate space, you know, business analyst, moved into being a project manager, being a manager, managing people, change, you know, management consultant. So, you know, at least in the last 17 years, I've spent all of the chunk of my life being in corporate Canada. And when I'm not consulting or working with clients, I'm doing events that are focused on the corporate Canada. So, you know, that interlink. And I love what you guys are saying. So when I say even a different perspective, it's not different in the sense that it's opposite to what you're saying. I feel, in addition to what you're saying, I feel that we ourselves too, as Black people, have a responsibility to be at the table. You know, there's also some onus on us in terms of what are we doing. You know, I've heard stories about where they're having these D&I discussions and they're inviting people in the organization who may be Black and say, come, let's have this discussion. And those people don't want to be at the table. So if they're not at the table when they're having the discussions, how can the organizations make this, you know, decisions that affect them, you know, type of thing? And whether we like it or not, there's a certain element that we have to be proactive and advocate for what it is that we want. You know, and we have to advocate on behalf of each other. I say that too, because when you think about corporate Canada too, you think about the larger and the bigger organizations. And there's something that they have. There's two ways you can rise to the top. And there's a place where you can only get to a bit and it stops here. It's having sponsors, having people that will be at the table that are speaking for you. So how do you set yourself apart in your own career so that even if you don't have that sponsor, somebody's speaking to you? So I'll give you an example. You know, there was this organization, then having a sponsor wasn't something so big, but it got to the table where they were saying, should Yvonne have this promotion? And they were all discussing this issue. And the person who advocated for me was a white woman. You know, I later on heard, because she was like, look, I know Yvonne, I know her work. This is what she did. And they made the assessment on me based on the quality of my work. But I also know situations in bigger organizations where it's all about having a sponsor, having a mentor, having people that will speak to you, because everybody has their person. So for me, what has been difficult is being an immigrant. I don't even see it as being Black. I see it as being an immigrant. So my circle is a little bit different from the circle. I didn't, go to schools with these people, or in the organizations. I mean, if I go back, I'm Nigerian. If I go back to Nigeria, the people I went to secondary school with, they're the people at the top. So you can imagine if I went into an organization, I'll just say, hey, Sarah, how you doing? I'm here. I need this. And guess what? People do business and help people that they know, like, and trust. So that thing about who I know when I know is what you also sometimes find happening, is what. I think that's a feedback. Christine, you joined me with some type of feedback. Okay. So those are the kind of things that I feel I struggle with. And it's a way that I have to actively see that as a Black person, as an immigrant, not just even as a Black person, because I know Black people who are well connected just because of the schools they went to, the networks they mixed in, and they're able to get things. So now I have to find different ways as a Black person in corporate Canada to find open doors for me, to network with the right kind of people, to create relationships and not wait for them to put policies in place that will help me get ahead. That's the way I see things in my own.
I think it's both ways. It's all on the corporation, because it hits their bottom line. Their bottom line comes out Black when you go Black, and of course it's up to the person too. You have to go get it. You have to make sure that you are different, you are competent, and you show that you have something to add. So, yeah.
And I think sometimes it lends to where you're at too. I'm from the Maritimes, and from the Maritimes understand an Indigenous Black population has been here for hundreds of years. So I am an Indigenous African Nova Scotian. So my ancestors go back to the 1700s. So there has been a large percentage of people, Blacks, that lived here for hundreds of years. So you do have aspects of racism or entrenched racism, systemic barriers to success. I worked in the corporate environment for 20 years. I was doing things that, as a, first of all, female only in an IT environment, and a Black female only in an IT environment back in the 90s, when IT was not, from a female perspective, was not there. A lot of females weren't in the systems administration side, and I became a system administrator. So I had to break barriers as a result of, first of all, being a female, working with 10 males that were all white males, and very much did not view me as being equal, first of all, as a female. And then working with men who had ideas that Blacks did not have the ability to, and having to overcome that. And working in that environment, I was quite successful at what I did, because I had to carve my own way out. I couldn't work with everyone in regards to saying we're equal, he's going to give me the right information. I had to go and research my information, making sure that, yes, he does give me the right information. I had to work a little bit harder, a little bit longer, but at the same time, I carved out a niche for who I was and what I wanted to do. And at the same time, knowing that I was in a corporate environment where still there were barriers to success for females, and there's barriers to success for people that were different other than the Eurocentric folks. So I knew all that, but I actually was successful in that environment. I left that environment 17 years ago to start my own business. And I am really big in EDI. And I do a lot of work across this country, and I do work internationally as well. But a focus I have is on diversity. And that's why I said it has to be embedded. And I hear what you're saying. Everybody has, I believe, Yvonne, truly in having a mentor or a sponsor. And it might not be somebody even within your own organization. It might be somebody outside that can actually cause you to think differently as we go through. But understand, we do still have this country was built on colonialism. And as a result, we will still have those vestiges within an organization, and especially in corporate Canada. But we actually have to change the landscape. And it can't be one voice. It can't be my voice in isolation of any other female or a Black male or person of color or Indigenous person, because we all have to collectively come together, and we can't be singing from different song sheets here. We have to have the same voice, same message to corporate Canada that this is unacceptable now, and they know about it. It's not as if they don't know about it, but we still, I've had since the last year's happened, I've had people coming to me, and it's almost like, oh, we need this done, we need this done. And everybody's coming. Is it something they want to do, or is it something they have to do? That's the difference. You want to do it, and I'm working with an organization who wants to do it. The CEO is 100% on board. The board is 100% on board. I report only to the CEO in order to get this done, because his team is not 100% on board yet, because there's still vestiges of racism in this society, and you will come across it. So I am going in and entrenching EDI within all their policies. And policies are great. It's the practice of policies that have the impact. That's where the policies will never be disproportionate against people. It's the practice, how people practice them, how it's played out in the workplace. And I think that what you have to do is you have to determine what we want to do. And I was just on a call yesterday, and I said on Nova Scotia human rights. So I see a lot of racism, and especially around people of color. But, you know, at the end of the day, this is not about people. This is about, let's just be human, be kind to people, but at the same time, let's make sure that there's a structure put in place that allows people like us to be accepted into there, not because we're Black, but because we bring value to the table. We bring skills and competencies to the table like our peers would, and just accept us for the fact that we are Canadian citizens and we have the right to a job and the fair way of life. So, you know, at the end of the table, at the end of the time frame, I work with people that really want to make a change. But I think we have to have that collective voice to say, this is what we want. It has to be our decision how we strategize this, not somebody else coming and telling us what we should be doing. That's been done for hundreds of years, telling us what we should do. Let us tell us what we should be doing.
100%. Sorry. 100% agree. Let's be honest. Like success, the path to success is different for each individual person because we bring diverse skills. And so this is the problem. You know, I work with you within the unions. I work with corporations on the other side of the table when we're bargaining language. But, you know, as a Black woman walking in there as a vice president of a local, I can tell you the first obstacle I had to overcome was the fact that they questioned my skills, they questioned my abilities. But we have diverse perspectives. Like I actually had to take like 3 months when I was at the local with different various employers and say to them, listen, I don't have time to waste to prove myself. Let's get down to what the issue is and let's resolve it. And when we talk about equity, inclusion, and diversity, I think more now than ever, many corporations are checking the box, but they're not checking the box appropriately. I may learn differently, but I may be very successful in a different capacity in an organization. So when you were talking about, you know, how employers are doing training and not everyone, the way I tell all employers, and I even tell my own union colleagues and unions, listen, equity is an investment. It's not an expense. And when you start looking at that, because that's what corporations are driven on, money, money, money. We are the number one, we buy products, we support businesses. And so it's about nourishing skills and developing success in different capacities. And corporations that do that will be the ones that come out the end and successful. But they have to support the voices and perspectives and listen to new ideas, because if not, it's old and stale, and you're seeing these corporations turning over.
Yeah. And what I was going to say, Yvonne, because you made a reference to, I guess, kind of rubbing shoulders, who you know, and because, you know, of being an immigrant to Canada. I work for a US-based organization. And so for me, it's a little bit different because everything is US-based. But what I've learned has been one of the good things for me, and what's been successful for me, is ensuring that my voice is heard at the highest possible level. Whether that be through engaging events, like we have a Black professionals group, We also have the professional women's group, and you'll find a lot of the individuals that manage or sponsor these groups, they're more senior level individuals in your organization. So for myself, I ensure that I'm present, I make my voice heard, and I'm not afraid, especially in those opportunities, to say what I do and how well I do it. Because I find that as women generally, and then on top of it as Black women, we tend to we even ourselves will question what we've done and how good of a job we've done at executing it. And that's a problem. We should not be afraid to be vocal about how successful we are. Case in point, there was a position that I was interested in. It's a US based, but as obviously, you know, there's different challenges that come with things along those lines. So I contacted my sponsor and I said, I've been networking with this individual. He's an executive vice president. We have a monthly meeting. The position's in his department. What do you think about me reaching out to him? And she said to me straight, she's like, why would you even ask me? She's like, if you were a man and a white man, and she's white, if you were a man and a white man, you wouldn't even second guess it. And those are the type of things that we're doing as women of color, especially kind of wondering, should I ask this question or no? Be bold. We have to be bold in order to effect change. Yeah. It's not going to happen. No one is going to do it for us. And again, for me, it's always just being vocal about exactly what you bring to the table. And I think we hear this, it's not so much what you have to say, it's how you say it. Sometimes we have to say it in a way in which they'll understand it. Yes. Right. And I think that is because historically I've been stated to be as, Jill, sound a little aggressive. And I'm wondering to myself, what did I say any different? So unfortunately, sometimes we have to tweak things for the right ear. But once you get into that ear, the road is yours. And so that's for me, that's my perspective and based on some of my experiences.
Yeah. Amazing, Jill. You noticed that you use the word aggressive because sometimes that happens when they talk about people of color, when they talk about Black people, when they talk about Indigenous, it's that aggression that comes out. We're just very passionate. That's what we are. And it's not an aggression in any way, shape, or form. But when you're passionate about something, you're talking from the heart and the head and not just thinking it through. It's coming through in how you actually exhibit yourself as well. And I think that that's just, to me, I don't call it aggression. It's a woman who has a knowledge of what she wants and where she wants to be. That's what comes out, because as a white woman who does the exact same thing, they will see them in a different light. And I just say, I'm sorry, but as a female, I am stating what I want to do, and I'm very determined in what I want to do. So I would say, of anything, being a Black female, we have traits that other people may not have, and that is strategizing. Because when you walk in a room, and I've said this so many times, I'm probably one of the best strategists around, because when I walk in a room, being in an organization where there are very few Blacks in the 80s and 90s, and so for 20 years in corporate Canada and organizations that under a very small number of Blacks, I had to strategize when I walked in that room, who was on my side, who was against me, how I was going to get or navigate the system in order to get to where I needed to be or what I wanted to do. Because I was always looked down, first of all, as a female in a very male-dominated environment, and then as a Black female at that. That's unknown, because there was no other females, let alone Black females, and there were no other Black males. So I was navigating upstream with this gushing water coming towards me, and you had to strategize. And I think that's what we bring to the table, because each and every one of us probably has gone into a room and sat down and have been the only person of color in that room, and then thinking, how do you strategize and make sure that your voice is heard, that you're respected at the end of the day, that your skills and competencies are there and they value them, and that you navigate the system. And that's all around strategizing. It's all around planning, and planning when to engage in the conversation and how to engage in the conversation.
Yeah, you raise many great points. And I think when I look at all what we've been discussing, there's the onus definitely on the organization to have to embed the D&I into the system and the way they're doing things. They have a responsibility to remove and take away those barriers that are not letting whether the Black people or the female or the BIPOC community to rise. There's that onus on them. And in addition, there is that onus on ourselves, to be advocates, not just for ourselves, but advocates for our sisters, advocates for, the people that surround us, even when we get to the table. That is very key, that when we find our seats at the table, that we're also advocating for other people to be part of it. And I also really love what Jillian said about also tweaking our voices, to not because we're saying we want to fit into the environment, but it's more also about the culture. Because if you went to like a Japanese culture, you would alter how you interact with them in order to be able to get the best results when you're at the table. So the same way, when we're at the table, we need to realize who is our audience that we're speaking to, because even as entrepreneurs or business people, we tweak our message to our audience. And it's the same way that when we're in the organizations that we're speaking in the boardroom, we also have to tweak our language in a way that, they're hearing what we're saying and they're not looking at us.
I love what you said that, Cynthia, because that's something I learned. Right. I've been to meetings where I'll leave and I'll get feedback saying, one, you're too aggressive, or the same meeting, you're too wishy-washy.
Yeah. I remember those individuals we're in the meeting with, they're tweaking their message to us as well, right? It's a game. It's almost a game that's being played to an extent. Everybody is adjusting to the audience so they can win.
And the most important. Sorry, we're all like looking at each other talking. But I think it's important to also come back to the strategizing. We also need to internally strategize as Black women and BIPOC people in an organization, because here's the thing: they'll create these equity, diversity, and inclusion programs, and they only want one, and then we're fighting each other. So the one thing that I always say is, I have my outside, I used to roller derby. I used to tell people, I will whip sisters forward because you're not my competition. If you can break the glass ceiling, I will support you. I will have your back. I will have your side. And if you need someone that is okay being assertive, powerful, and strong, and I'm not changing who I am, I will be in the front and take those licks for you to go through. But we have to strategize, because the minute we compete with each other in a negative way, because it's okay to compete for a position, but we support each other. If we compete in a negative way, we do not proceed in organizations, and we always have that tokenized position that even though we're skilled, capable, and able, they want to tokenize us, and they dangle that carrot that you are the only. So the strategy is also internal in our communities and in our workplaces, that we start to stand and create a plan moving forward, because that's how we hold organizations and corporations accountable.
Yeah, when you look back to, one of the things is when you look back to Black history, when you look back to slavery, how did they conquer us? By dividing us.
Exactly.
That has always been the strategy. When you divide people, then you can conquer people. When we start to really work together as a community, and I really say, I struggle with that word, because even within the community, we have a lot of healing to do internally to work together. And when we start to do those things, that's when we stand as one.
Yeah, that's right.
When we stand as one, the power of standing as one is where, again, I come from a place of we have to advocate for ourselves. And it's really standing as one. Like you see so many different organizations doing things. How can we collaborate together to have one big, strong voice, that is powerful?
And I think the most important thing is we also, as females, outside of standing together as one, we have to have our brothers in here as well, because sometimes they're seen as being different, even yet again. But I think we also have to realize we stand on the shoulders of others. There are people before us that broke the ice. And just like you said, Christine, it's almost like bringing people forward. And if I am offered something and allowed to have a voice, I make sure there's somebody in the wings that I can bring forward and promote and support and allow them to move forward, because I'm not here forever. How can I help support the other women behind me or beside me to get in front of me? Because if that's what it takes, then that's what it takes. But we cannot say, well, that's my position there, and I'm going to take that. I think, the right person to do it at the right time is what we need. But we need to cherish what all of us have done and allow and embrace what all of us have done and move forward in a more collective way instead of tearing down, because you hit a really good point, Yvonne. Slavery has taught us to divide. It's only one seat. No, there are multiple seats up there. They're telling us one, but if I see 5 seats, then 5 people can go there. And it doesn't mean that only one Black has to be there. I think we have to start, if anything, being more effective and responsive in changing the culture of these organizations, because the culture is what's hindering us. And we have to not only talk and advocate for ourselves, we have to start changing culture and educating people, because sometimes education might be hurtful. And when I say that, people do not want to acknowledge the past, especially if they were the victors, and we weren't.
Yeah,
but at the end of the day, exactly. At the end of the day, we have to acknowledge. And if something happens, state something. And you're not putting them in a bad light. If they feel bad, that's on them. You're just stating something that's very obvious.
Yeah, so just one thing, just being respectful of Dwayna's event. We are at 2:17. So our session has really come to an end. So I would say if we could just do a round table and everybody just has that last one word or sentence so that we can really bring this to an end, because we're past 2 minutes past our time. So
Yvonne, go for
it. I'm still articulating my thought. No, if I had to say something, it would be the change starts with us as a community. So while there's that big advocacy for groups and everything to do something, change starts with us, and we need to take personal responsibility to also, in quote, also be doing something and not just waiting for it.
Exactly.
Jillian?
Okay, for me, I would say create your opportunities. Be a voice, be bold. Do not wait for anyone to carry you. We have to carry ourselves and bring those along with us. Just a quick point, connect with individuals on LinkedIn, reach out to people, do informational interviews, connect with those that have the chance to make change. Those at the top will carry you with them if you can demonstrate that you're equal to them. So be bold. Don't be afraid.
Yeah, awesome. Christine.
Know how phenomenal you are. Stop evaluating your worth, your skills, your abilities to Eurocentric standards, because it's not working. It hasn't worked. They've passed wealth down to wealth down. Please know that you are capable of doing everything and anything you put your mind to. And I do strongly push, this is what this is about. The networking, the connections. We learn from each other. We grow together. And, to Yvonne's point, building as a community is not an individual. It's as a collective that we make change. And I know as a union, that's what we make change with, our collective power. So use it and succeed, and we'll all succeed.
Yeah. Thanks. Sasha?
Yeah, corporate Canada needs to be bullish on Black. When Black wins, everybody wins. Obama was in, LGBTQ rights went up. When Serena broke tennis, look, we have Naomi Osaka, we have Bianca Andreescu, everybody wins. When Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier, now there's Japanese players. Be bullish on Black, everybody wins.
And Cynthia?
I would say that let's strategize and create your roadmap to success. But that roadmap means we have to be inclusive of other women, support them because they will support us. When you have a family, it's almost like having that village. And we know about being raised in a village. I think as women, we have to create that village, and we have to come collectively together and continue working to forge ahead. One person does not do it in isolation of others. I will always stand on the shoulders before me, and I hope people will stand on my shoulders moving forward.
Awesome, ladies. All of you have said awesome things. And even from the audience, we didn't even get a chance to get questions, but I see all of you in Nkechi, Marguerite, Novelle, Patience. you know, thank you guys. Ushnish, you were there with us all through. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for the comments and engaging with us. You know, it's really at the end of the session, but like we said already, a great way to connect is network and connect on LinkedIn and everything and build the network, you know, and that's how we support each other. So thank you to everybody. Thank you, ladies. I wish we could go on, but I don't want to end her.
And thank you, ladies. Such an awesome group to sit with. So
I'll be connecting.
Thank you very much, ladies.
Look at my LinkedIn request.
Okay.
Thank
Have
you.
a rest of the day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful event.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.